Welcome back once again to the Nothing to Something podcast. This is the podcast that was put together to bring you guys insight into the lives of various self-made success stories and high performers within their fields, as well as provide a wealth of knowledge that can support you on your own journey towards success. Now, this is a special one, guys. This is episode 20. This is a bit of a big deal for me, and I'll explain why as we get into the podcast itself. So this time around, we're going to flip the script. This time around, I'm going to be on the other side of the microphone, and we've got a special guest host who's a previous guest to the podcast, high performer himself, Aaron Burns. As always, please like, share, and most importantly, subscribe for future content.
So, Marc McLaren, thank you for having me on the podcast. Really special moment, your 20th episode, and to celebrate that, you've asked me to come on and do the interview questions, which is absolutely amazing honor. So, thank you. Before we start, how's things?
Really good, really good. And yeah, firstly, before we start, thank you, massive thank you. It's 20 episodes. I said to you off air, didn't I, that it's a bit of a flagship one. And that was outlined to me by watching other podcasts, which I do a lot. Someone I do listen to a lot is Chris Williamson, whose podcast is absolutely massive now. And something that he discussed a good number of months back now when I was in the early stages was that 90+% of podcasts don't make it past episode 1. And of the ones that do, 90+% don't make it to episode 20. So from that moment forward, the way I'm thinking, right, I've got to meet that 20 mark at least. So yeah, it is a bit of a flagship one. Some names sprung to mind of who would want on it to sit in the other seat. And you were at the top of that list, mate. So thank you. Thanks for coming on and thanks for hosting. I'm a little bit nervous, It's a bit different being on the other side.
Listen, it's an absolute pleasure. I hope we weren't just top of that list in alphabetical order. But listen, we are where we are, and we'll crack on. But that's what I say, you've done amazing. I really appreciate, obviously, having me on as a guest, and then to come back on as a host for the day is absolutely amazing. So yeah, appreciate that, mate. Okay. So we'll start how we always start. Who is Marc McLaren? Talk to me about yourself.
These questions get a lot deeper when you're on this side of the microphone, don't they? It's a whole different ball game. So I'm starting to get a feel for it now on the other side. But yeah, that's a great start. And I've had some great answers from the guests that have been on the podcast so far. For me, I could have give 10 different answers across the last 10 years for this. I really could. But I think the stage that I'm at now, Marc McLaren is someone who's come from very humble beginnings, who's come from little to nothing, probably hence the title of the podcast and the reasoning behind the podcast starting, which we'll probably get into in a little bit. But someone who's very hungry to find out where the limits of my potential lies. So I've gone probably full circle from the environment I grew up in, from a victim mindset to probably a fixed mindset. I'm a big person on mindset now, and I'm a true believer that I've got a growth mindset. So he's someone who's evolved a hell of a lot over the years, and someone at my current stage who believes anything's possible. We're only really governed by, as I say a lot on social media, we're governed by the grace of God and by time. There are only limits.
Absolutely fantastic answer. I think the first interesting point from what you said there was that over the last 10 years, you could have given 10 different answers. So does that speak to evolution? Does that speak to time? Or does that speak to personal growth and the development that you've done over the period of time? What would you put that down to?
Yeah, certainly some evolution in there. I put a lot of it down to failing my way to success to some degree. I've tried a lot of things. I've always been sort of inquisitive, even when I was in tougher environments or probably around the wrong people. I've always been inquisitive and always wanted to know how things worked and why things worked and how that person got to that level, and always been inquisitive to some degree. So I've tried a lot of things. I've failed at a lot of things, and that's kind of brought growth across time, really. So I've learned a hell of a lot of lessons, and I don't do regrets. But if I was to have any regrets, it'd be that I didn't start sooner. But then when I really think about that comment there, I think that I am the person I am, and I've got to the stage where I am at now through having walked the tough road and having been through it. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything.
Amazing. Again, some key points there. I talk about failing forward a lot, and we are the people we are because of the failures and because of the experiences that we've had with along with the transitional skills. But failing forward ultimately means that you learn from that perceived failure and take that into the next opportunity, which you've seemed to do really really well. Talk to me about Marc's journey. Who is Marc? Where did Marc start? What's Marc's family life and upbringing like? What was that like?
Amazing, absolutely amazing. Looking back, I struggle, humble, as I've just said there to start with. Grew up in a housing estate in South Manchester, M16 postcode for anyone from Manchester. We didn't have a lot, but we had everything we needed. Mum and dad are absolutely amazing. I owe everything to mum and dad, honestly. We had very little, but we were grounded with the right values and principles. We knew right from wrong. We knew what mattered. And it's only really when I got to later in life that I understood the sacrifices that my parents made to make sure that me and my siblings had the right upbringing, were provided for. And I think a lot of those things have been instilled in myself and my siblings in later life to sort of follow a similar path to some degree. So yeah, very, very humble beginnings. Great childhood. Had loads of fun. Didn't you don't miss what you don't know about? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So there was no lack or there was no want because we didn't know of anything that we know of now. It wasn't a social media age. You couldn't see these amazing lives on Instagram. It was just we
yeah,
kind of got on with it. We lived on a housing estate. We had loads of friends around us. We played out every day after school. It was mint. Moving on a little bit from there into adolescence and early adulthood was where I probably went down a bit of a tricky road. Was around certain peer groups, around certain things that a lot of lessons were learned, to put it lightly.
yeah,
Do you know what? The older I get and the more further I get into life, I'm more than happy to talk about my failures and the lessons that I've learned because I'm happy with the person I've become, if that makes sense. So to paint a bit of a picture, I was around all sorts, and I'm talking gangsters, drug dealers, you name it. I've seen all sorts go on. Took some crazy chances. I've seen 100 grand in cash in a JD bag. Do you know what I mean? Not my
yeah,
money, by the way. Just put a little disclaimer in there. But it
yeah,
was it was easy to see how people got drawn into that life, and there was a lot of risk there, but there were also some massive rewards, or so it looked like at the time. So that was a big part of my life for a long period, probably through my teenage years into probably the first half of my 20s, to be honest,
okay,
until I gravitated away from that life. And when I talked about a little bit earlier on about my mindset there was kind of the victim mindset of this is where I'm from, this is how it is for us, we've got to get it how we live, to evolve it a little bit. Thanks to my parents once again, because even though the stuff I was involved in at one stage in my life, I was never really out of work. Do you know what I mean? I had a solid, legit income
yeah,
for most periods of my life, and I put that down to the fact that my parents instilled values in it to where you're going to live in this house, you're going to go out and you're going to earn, you're going to do something, you're not going to be a deadbeat, for lack of a better phrase. So I always had that ground in there, and it was kind of that I kind of built on. So changing points in my life were obviously having my kids. I had my first child 9 years ago now, and that was huge. From that point forward, it was straight and narrow. It was anything it took to sort of get ahead because it
yeah.
was about more than just myself. So yeah, we've been through it. We've been through it. But yeah, looking back, wouldn't change a thing.
No, I think that's super important because ultimately they've been the stepping stones that have made you the individual that you are today. You talked about the grounding from your parents and the humble beginnings and maybe the gravity of becoming a father, which is super important. Is there anything that you look back on and think that was a skill that I learned at an early stage, which stays with you and helps you be the man that you are today? Was there anything significant within that period that made you who you are, that become your core values or habits?
Great question. Great question. I'm thinking back, there were quite a lot, to be honest. I think kind of being in that environment at such an early age, if you can call it an early age, from your teens onwards, you're exposed to life and probably life going west at quite an early age. And a lot of people either don't get exposed to a lot of the things that I've seen, or it certainly comes at a later age. So, sort of being exposed to the struggles in life and getting through things, it kind of, at the time, almost made it the norm. Do you know what I mean? So things that would
Yeah.
kind of send your head west and make you have a bit of a mental health struggle, or you'd really struggle to cope with, those things were just happening quite regularly. So when I got later on in life, and we all paint these pictures within our heads, I kind of flipped that internally. I didn't use this external by any means, but the things that I've been through, the things that I've witnessed, and the things that I've seen in life, if I am now going for a massive job interview, for example, or I'm conversating with a really important conversation, I'm doing something really important, I've done things that are risking a lot more than what this situation is. Do you know what I mean? I've been in the deep
Yeah.
end more than this. Not to try and play it down, but if I'm being completely honest, I'm someone who's struggled within my own rights inwardly with a lot of things, with insecurities, with bits of anxiety, with probably probably a bit of lack of being enough, you know. I've never said that out loud. I've never said
Yeah.
that out loud, and that's something I still feel to this day at times. But I've probably outworked that sort of detriment of self worth, or that deficiency of self worth. I think the more I've done, the more I've experienced, the more I've got through and understood that I've always got through it. It's given me something, a bit of confidence and a bit of something to fall back on when I do get them doubts.
Yeah. Sounds like to me is that you've built your inner value via work rate and learning that
Mm.
growth, and that's give you another level of confidence to try and make the step up, which is a great skill and understanding to have. And ultimately, it's led you to this platform now where you've got your own podcast, you're 20 episodes in, uh, and you're impacting people, which is something that I talk about an awful lot. Whilst we're on the subject, talk to me about the podcast, what it is, how it came about, and what were the initial thoughts surrounding the podcast.
Yeah, so it was something I wanted to do for a long time before it came about. Probably it kicked off with the turn of the year coming into 2023. Probably 2 to 3 years prior to that, I thought about it. But again, there was a sort of combination there of, I'm someone, especially across the last decade since I had my kids, I like to work at the upper limit of what I'm capable of. I'm
Yeah,
quite open with that on social media. At times, you could argue that I might burn out, or be culpable to burn out because I tried to work at that upper limit. But with so many things going on, I told myself this story in my head that I didn't have the time for it, or that I wouldn't do it justice because I had so many other things going on. There was also, probably being completely honest, a bit of that lack of confidence again of starting a podcast. Who's going to want to listen to me? I'm just this kid who's come from nowhere, and you know what I mean. What makes my word something that people are going to hang to, or take for good, and go and implement into their own lives. So there was a lot of insecurity and doubt there that I had to shelve before I got it going. But the thought process behind it was that if I can help people, even one person, then that's what I'm about. I think
yeah,
it's kind of set up really geared towards me back in the day. I look back and I think if I would have had, during my times of struggle and my upbringing, and the wobbles that I had back in the day, if I'd have had a platform like this, or somebody like me now who was open to having these conversations and putting out knowledge, and all the stuff that I put out is geared towards self-improvement, essentially, whether that be physically, mentally, professionally, financially. It's just to try and get people ahead. And I've struggled my way through all this, you know, Aaron. It's kind of,
yeah.
none of it's come naturally. I'm not the most intelligent. I hold my hands up. I read a lot of books. I've taken a lot of content over the past probably decade now, and I've struggled my way towards it. So if I can save people some time, that might sound crazy. So they don't have to read quite as many books, although I'm not saying don't read because it's a big part of it. They don't have to go down as many wrong roads and as many failures because I've done it for them. And that makes me feel good, you know what I mean? And there's always a selfish element, and that's probably where I get the well-being and the good feeling from, the fact that I can provide that.
There's been there's been a in the last couple of answers there. There's been a link towards like self-confidence, self-belief, an element of doubt, I think there'll probably be people out there that are feeling the same, but maybe for different reasons. Maybe not to start a podcast, but to maybe go for the job that they desire, or maybe even the partner that they desire. How did you overcome the lack of confidence or the fear? How did you manage to break through that?
With great difficulty, being completely honest. It's not something that's even gone. It's still something I deal with. And I have days, I'm not going to say I struggle massively nowadays with my mental health, but I have my doubts, I have my down days, I have my lack of confidence days, and that could be from all sorts. I'm talking from capability standpoint, from speaking in front of a camera, to having conversations with strangers, to even, it's a crazy one, and my missus puts me back in line with this all the time. There's a thing called body dysmorphia that some people might you know what I mean, might have heard about, and people see me and I'm trying to stay in shape year round, and I've got my abs out, I'm lean, I'm in shape, and that's obviously due to the fact that I train so much and I'm so aware of what I'm eating and what I'm training, and there's a level of consistency there. But that consistency and that commitment, the same way it does for the mental and the professional side of my life, comes behind this insecurity and comes behind this lack of confidence, and that's probably what keeps me going. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't really until recent years where I've realized that, and I've looked back and I thought, the fact that I've got these insecurities, I've got this lack of confidence, and I'm probably a little bit insecure about the person that I am or my capabilities to achieve the things I want to achieve in life. That fear of not achieving them is what's pushing me on. So I'm not over it. I'm really not. I still struggle on a day to day. And that's something I've learned in really recent times, to where people want to hear that. Do you know what I mean? We live in an age now of social media where everything looks perfect. And I've probably been guilty of that in the past. You know what I mean? People are looking and thinking, this guy's got his shit together. But I still struggle, man. I still struggle with the mental, with the physical, with the professional side of life. I still struggle, but that's what keeps me going.
You're hitting some really key points here, by the way. I think the consensus across social media or in the world at the moment is that successful people are not driven by fear, and that they have all year round motivation and consistency and continuity. But actually, when you do study the successful people and the greats, they're driven by the desire not to return to where they've come from, or the self-worth element, or achieving the expectations of others. I don't know if you've read the book from Mo Godat, but the happiness equation is your expectations versus reality, and the only reason you're unhappy is if your expectations don't meet reality. And I think that fear does drive successful people on to continue to push and strive. So I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which was fantastic. So thank you. I'm someone who talks about vision. We both know John Hope, and he talks about vision bringing decision, and I'm someone who's very big on vision boards, as I know you are. Talk to the audience about your big goals. What are your big aspirations? You've achieved a lot already. You're doing a lot right now. I know exactly what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. But what are your big goals that you maybe not told your audience what you're trying to achieve?
Oof, oof. Yeah, there were a few in there. There were a few in there, and luckily for me, and it was my brother. It was our kid that said this to me. Next in line, he once said to me that I was lucky. He's very successful in his own profession, by the way. He said to me that I was very lucky because I have found my passion and my calling, and not a lot of people find that. He's a bit younger than me. He's 5 or 6 years younger than me, but still, obviously, a grown man. And although he's smashed it within his career and he's gone to the heights of what he's doing, he's not found that, and a lot of people haven't found that now. I agree with that. It was something that massively resonated at the time, and I do think I'm quite lucky, and that aligns into all my goals. Not all of my goals. We'll obviously have some private and some family orientated goals and that sort of thing, but from a professional standpoint, at least, everything gravitates for me back towards coaching and mentoring.
Right.
And when I really think about this, I think it comes back to the fact, as I just said before, that how much I needed that in the beginning. I still very much look to other people for coaching and mentoring. I very much class yourself as one of those people,
Appreciate
as a
it.
mentor to myself and someone who's been massively helpful, especially across recent times and introducing me to financial services and etc. And things that I didn't know about before and wasn't involved about in before, but providing something for other people to be able to excel. It really lights me up. It lights me up, and that's what's kind of evolved from the stage I got myself together. So across the last 10 years, and I keep saying the last 10 years or the last decade, because that sort of caps where I got my head down. My daughter was born nearly 10 years ago, which was
Mm.
probably a turning point or was a major turning point in my life. Around that stage, I went into PT. So I was coaching people on a one-to-one basis, on a group basis with classes. Across those years, that evolved into gym management in leading teams, into multi-site management or area management and leading bigger teams, and then into a coaching business, which was essentially coaching people on a one-to-one basis on a performance and success and life coaching. So everything I've sort of done out of choice and out of passion has always gravitated towards the coaching and mentoring route. So that's where we're going for the future. We'll continue to get people like yourself and successful individuals who've walked the path to come on the podcast and grace us with some knowledge,
Yeah.
create enough of a buzz and awareness around the podcast to where it creates a brand, to where we can re-input into some course creation, into some online learning, into things that we can pass back to the people. That's the vision for the future. And we can educate the masses to be able to empower themselves for the future. That's the dream.
That's super, super powerful. Adrian's got a really good podcast called No Passion, No Point. And if your passion's aligning with all your goals and your spirituality and your core values, then your brother's right. You're in the right place doing the right thing. And obviously knowing you personally, I think that everything that you're doing at the moment does align and is working really well. So yeah, keep going. We both read a lot of books. There is a great author called Matthew Side who talks about purposeful practice. And you've talked a lot about confidence and self-talk and being the mentor that you potentially needed in your younger years. Would you say you're talented? And if you are talented, what's your talent?
Tricky question. And I've asked this before, obviously, on the podcast. It's a tricky one. Honestly, I don't think I'm talented. I'm not, that's not trying to play myself down. That's not self-deprecation. I really don't think I'm talented. And I think about this, like you just said there, where would I say I'm talented? I really don't think I am. I really don't think I am. And I'm never content, but I'm reasonably content to some degree in where I'm at currently in life and the direction that I'm heading in. But I think it's all down to inputs. I think the outputs have been direct results of the inputs. And that can be scary to some people because I keep alluding to this decade and the past 10 years of reading and learning and self-education and putting myself through courses and investing in myself. Don't think down the line. This is what I tell people on a coaching basis when I do one-to-one or even group. You can get scared by the big, hairy, audacious goals, as we call them, and looking down the line, it can get overwhelming. And then when you don't see
Mm.
yourself creeping towards it, then you start getting a little bit put off, do you know what I mean? And the goals fall by the wayside. I'm a big believer, and you see it every day on social media, hashtag daily contribution. Know where you want to go and then contribute towards it daily. So no, that's a long way around, but I really don't think I'm talented. I think I'm aware of where I want to go. I've got acute awareness of what I want to achieve and the direction I want to move in. And I make sure that every single day I contribute towards my mental and physical health, towards my personal development and learning something or consuming some good content, towards my family and social relationships, and towards the rest of that will kind of contribute towards profession and money anyway, financial.
Was yeah, really, really in-depth answer. Really, really appreciated it. For me, someone who knows you personally and works with me now very closely, I do think you are talented. 100%. I think your talent is that you're a great listener and a great learner. That you've got a thirst for knowledge. You talked about the last decade. you've transitioned from what you was doing to becoming a PT, to becoming a coach, to becoming an area manager, now to be in financial services, working with ourselves. You're a great learner and you're a great listener.
Thank you.
And
I'll take that.
that,
Thank you.
and that's a skill and a talent. And sometimes we look at talent as being able to play basketball or football or having a high IQ or whatever. But sometimes it's just those core skills that people have got nailed down, and actually the want and desire to try and perfect them. And you are a great listener and a great learner. We talked about the daily contribution, which I really like. I'm a man of many sayings. What would you say is your why? I see you in the gym every morning at 6 a.m. I know obviously you're a big family man. They could potentially be whys, but yeah, break them down and talk to me about your why.
Yeah, a big one is family. Hit the nail on the head there. A big one for me is family. As I said earlier on, there, everything changed for me having a family, being a father, being a provider, being a leader. I do class myself as a leader. As I said, I've been a manager and an area manager within under different umbrellas, and I prefer the term leader over manager. It
Yeah,
needs to be a bit of both intertwined, but I very much class myself as a leader. I'd always put people first, and that starts at home. So for me, being a leader, being a provider, being the best possible version of myself, it means that I can provide better, be a better father. And everything I'm doing and everything I'm sort of trying to work towards in the future is only going to positively benefit my family, my two girls, my fiance, soon to be wife. It's all contributing. Outside of that, Aaron, I heard something a long, long time ago now, good number of years ago now, where I can't remember who it was, and if somebody knows who this was, by all means credit them. I'm not trying to steal it. There was a saying that a guy walked through life, had his average life, got to the pearly gates, and the big man greeted him. So rocked up, God said, Mark, welcome. This is heaven. Before I let you in, I just want to show you what you could have been, what you could have achieved in life if you would have applied yourself, if you would have fulfilled your potential. This is what you could have achieved. And wow, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Do you know what I mean? Having sort of walked the road I've walked already and gone from a bit of a crossroads to having I could have gone a complete different way to self-improvement, definitely to some degree. Now I'm curious as to what I could achieve, and I think anybody should be. I think we've all got a moral obligation to become the best possible version of ourselves. Imagine walking through life and not finding out what you could have been, what you could have achieved. You know what I mean? I'm not just talking financial motivation here. I'm talking as a partner, as a father, or a mother, um, professionally. Do you know what I mean? It's just, yeah, I want to know. I want to know. I want to go out of this life and know I left it all on the table. Do you know what I mean? I've done everything within my power. It is what it is.
yeah, no, that's super powerful, super powerful, and a great trait of every great leader is the ability to tell a story, and that was a great story, even though it wasn't authentically your own. Really, really powerful. Um, that leads me on to another word that we probably both use, and I probably link this word to Tim Grover, which is credit to Tim Grover now. Relentless. That relentless pursuit of those 1% of you fulfilling your potential. How do you find the energy within to be as relentless as you are? Is it based on that story, or are there some other contributing factors?
That's certainly a big part of it. Certainly a big part of it. And I've got to a stage where I do think I'm relentless. I show it regardless. I pride myself on it. It's not easy. It's not easy. And I'm probably guilty myself of making it look easy through my own platforms and my own social media outlets and etc. People go on every morning without fail. They see me in the gym at 6 a.m. They see me doing this, that, the other, and posting motivational quotes. As I've just said earlier on, I struggle. I struggle. I posted something recently about the struggles that I've been going through myself recently due to various factors in life. I'm someone who works at that upper echelon, that upper limit. Being relentless is a struggle. It really is a struggle, but for me, when I talk about these daily contributions, and you've just alluded to being relentless there on a daily basis, it just needs to be some level of input. And that's what I need people to understand. And that's what I coach people into when I'm speaking to people on a one-to-one or a group basis. Every day doesn't have to be a game changer. You don't want to change your life in one day. If I show up, then I'm classing that as contribution. It's daily contribution. One day I might run a marathon. Next day I might walk. I might walk to the shop and back. I'm active. Do you know what I mean? One day I might cover 10 families in the life insurance game, and the next day I might cover one, or just give some advice out even to people who want a bit of further advice as to how their family is better protected. Every day is different, but as long as something's being contributed, that's what I'm classing as relentless, and that's what I need people to know. Every day is not going to be a game changer. Just show up, just do something that just moves you incrementally in the right direction.
Masterful. I think that's so powerful. We talk about the 1%, we talk about the daily contribution, we talk about no cons to consistency. You mentioned earlier on about building a brand, and when you come to athletics or fitness, the first brand that you think of is probably Nike, and their slogan is "Just do it." Some people say "Just show up." Just by turning up every single day, trying to improve, or at least maintain from the day before, you are making a move forward. A little brick or a step towards your big, hairy, audacious goals. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. And what you did the other day on, I think it was Sunday, on your Instagram, the video saying that you maybe didn't want to do the workout and that you struggled to get out of bed. I think that's super important. And I think I'm part of that problem as well, because people see me get up every day and go for a run. And some days you don't want it. But that accountability comes from the fact that you and I not both know that people within our platform are expecting you to be in the gym at 6 and me to be on a run at 6, and that accountability drives us on. So they have to find that within themselves and enable themselves to push forward. So that's absolutely brilliant. My next question was going to be about your daily habits and your routine, but you've sort of touched upon that. So I'm going to change the question a little bit. Let's fast forward to Marc McLaren in 2024. What daily habit will you have introduced to your routine that's not currently in it?
Question. Good question. Good question. Good question. Do you know what? Something that I'm not going to say I'm struggling with, but something that I want more consistently in my life right now is, I'm not going to say balance. I would have previously said balance, but the more I do chase my goals and the more ambitious I become, I understand that balance isn't realistic. If you've got big, massive goals, then balance is out the window to some degree. Do you know what I mean? You have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed. But something that I do want to implement and make sure happens to some degree, as we just talked about there, it's not going to be hours every day, but a little bit every day is family time. Do you know what I mean? I just need to recenter just for, even if it's an hour or half an hour a day, make sure every day, there we go, every day I'll have dinner with my girls and with my fiance and just spend that time just recentering, because there is a lot going on. I do juggle. I do outlay on my social media outlets, and it's a lot. It's hectic, and credit to them for putting up with me is probably not the right phrase. I do think I am a good father. I do think I'm a good partner, but I could do more. I could be more centered when we do spend that time together. So that's something. Yeah, great question, by the way, and that's something that I'm going to take away. I'm going to implement that. I'm not even going to wait for 2024. I'm implementing that from going forward.
That's credit to you. There was some brilliant words there. You said you're not going to use the word balance. You're going to be a little bit more centered. I think there's an influx of people looking for balance whilst looking for high performance. And I was talking to a wellness coach yesterday who I'm going to incorporate into my system. And she was saying that balance it's almost like a pendulum. You mentioned the word obsessed. There are going to be swings, but that centered element for family time is going to be super important. And as it swings from one side to another, there's always going to be that time where it's in the middle, and can we focus and utilize that centered time to create an element of balance. But it's super important to be obsessed with whatever your passion is as well. So yeah, that was brilliant. Again, because the conversation's flowing so naturally, as these conversations always do with yourself, my next question is always about happiness. How would you describe happiness? What is happiness to you, and when are you happiest?
Again, great question. This is a question I've asked to numerous guests on the podcast, and until you ask it to yourself, you don't realize how deep this is and how hard it is to answer.
Yeah.
To be completely honest with you, happiness for me is a mood to some degree. I don't personally, I don't hang too much on it. Now, I'm not saying that I'm unhappy by any means, but I think happiness comes and goes. What I've found, especially over recent years, is the more I develop, I kind of find happiness, or probably a better description being contentness, being more content with me feeling that I'm on the right track, if that makes sense. So, as a father, as a partner, in terms of achieving my goals, in terms of fulfilling my potential, if these things are aligning for me, then I feel content. And it is a contentious one now because we're in a bit of an age now, aren't we, where it's a bit of a dodgy subject, touching on gender roles and stuff like that. They call me a little bit old fashioned as a man, as a provider, as a father, as a partner, as the person that I am. I don't hinge too much on my own happiness, but I would say I am content if those I'm providing for are happy. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
if I feel my partner and my kids are happy, if they've got smiles on their faces and I'm providing for them and putting things in place for them, I'm taking them on holidays. It doesn't have to all be material things, but I'm being the dad, I'm being there, and I'm providing what they need. That brings contentness to me. In terms of happiness, I have happy moments, but I don't really hinge too much on me being happy, if that makes sense.
No,
But yeah, it's a work in progress, that question. Honestly, I ask it to myself on a semi-regular basis now since doing the podcast, and it's ever evolving.
I do think that's super important. That happiness question. I think sometimes, like you say, it's probably a mindset. It's probably a feeling. But that ultimate form of happiness, you mentioned the word content and contentness 3 or 4 times in your answer. For me, that equation would probably equal peace or competition.
Mm,
I'm happiest when people around me are peaceful and I'm competing, either with myself
yeah,
or with some other area. So I think that was a fantastic answer, and those reflections, both daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly, are super important as to what happiness means to you, and that might evolve and change over time. Last question-ish in this sort of section is what's your main message? What's the main aim of everything that you're doing on a daily basis? What would be a legacy statement if someone had to say a statement about you? What would that statement read?
that anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. Anybody can achieve anything. It sounds cliche. It sounds cheesy, that, but I think I'm proof of that. And I'm not finished by any means. I'm not at the height of where I'm going. Mark my words. Watch this space. But if I can do it there, and I'm not, I know we had a bit of debate as to whether I was talented earlier on. I'm not massively talented in anything. I'm not a sports person. I wasn't massively athletic. I'm the tallest, and that's about the most of anything I am. But
Yeah.
I'm not the smartest by any means. Didn't get the best grades in school or in education. Anybody who commits themselves to understanding what it is they want and where they want to go and the person they want to become, which is extremely important, and contributes to that in little baby steps, day after day, consistently, will move towards that goal. Anybody can do it, and that's the message that I'm trying to drive. And on a one-to-one basis on my platforms, on the podcast, anybody can do it. Don't put me on a pedestal. I'm not that guy. I'm not. I'm the most average guy from out of nowhere that you can ever imagine. So if I can do it and I can go somewhere, Anybody can do it. That'd be my message.
I like that. I really do. Anyone can do it. It's very powerful. It speaks to a huge audience. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent here, so bear with me. I talk about football a lot. So if you had your Jose Mourinho moment, and Jose obviously calls himself the special one, and I'd say I was the consistent one. Um, what would your statement name be? What would your Jose Mourinho moment be?
Oof, oof. That's a difficult question. You're probably on the spot there now. And consistency is taken. I think I pride
Yeah,
myself on being consistent and relentless. I really do. I just show up. That's a difficult question. That's a difficult question.
might be an
I'd
answer
have
for
to.
another episode.
It may be. It'd be something along the lines of the podcast. That's probably how I've come up with the podcast name.
Mm,
Literally nothing to something, nothing to something. It'd be something along them lines because one foot in front of the other, those baby steps, we're going from nothing to something, and I'm living proof of it. So back to the answer there. Anyone can do it. Trust me, I am not special. If I can achieve things, and I'm at a stage in my life now without going into too much detail where some things are starting to fall into place across different avenues, self-employed businesses, employed roles, all sorts of ventures going on. Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
yeah, yeah. So we're getting to the final questions. Morning routines. How does a day with Marc McLaren start? I know that by 6 you're at the gym. What happens prior to that, and what happens after that?
Yeah, yeah. Morning routine's massive, absolutely massive. And I don't think it's any coincidence that most of the high performers that have been on the podcast are early starters. I'm an early starter as well. I used to be 5 for years, and I'm now 5:30. I've got an extra half an hour in there. I'll keep it real. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah,
Um, but I wake up at 5:30 every day. I absolutely sneak downstairs because my girls are asleep, and if I wake them up, then everything just goes out the window. So
yeah,
I'm like, honestly, I'm stepping on pillows and I hydrate. I go straight downstairs. I hydrate with supplements. I take in, I drink a liter of water with some greens, with some creatine, with some L-tyrosine, which is I've talked about in another podcast, is the precursor to dopamine,
yeah,
and getting things going within the body. And then once I've hydrated, I'm off to the gym where I multitask with listening to some good content, very similar to yourself, either an audio book or a podcast while I
mm,
train. And I think it's pivotal. I really do. If anybody who is stuck in a rut or wants to get to that next level in life and is not getting up early already, I know everybody's situations are different, but if you can get that out of the way and in essence eat the biggest, ugliest frog, if for anyone who's read the book, yeah, Eat That Frog,
yeah,
it's getting something out of the day that most people dread. A lot of people go to work and think, oh, I've got to go to the gym after work. And half the time it doesn't happen. When you do it early in the day and get out of the way, it's done by 7 a.m. You've burnt your calories, you've done your stuff, you've taken in some good content, you've everything's going and bubbling and your endorphins are releasing in your body and you're ready to tackle the day. So from there, I'll come back, depending on which day it is. I'll get the girls ready for nursery and school. I do the dad stuff, I do the nursery run, I do the school run. I come back and get into my deep work. I just drink water and black coffee up until lunchtime because I intermittent fast. Just another podcast on intermittent fasting, which is absolutely top drawer, been a game changer for me. And I get my deep work out of the way. So I really get stuck into anything that is the toughest tasks. If I've got something that day that is a little bit daunting or it's going to take a period of time or really need some focus, your body in that morning state and before you've been fed lends itself to you being hyper alert and on the ball. So I get my toughest stuff out of the way in the morning.
brilliant. Absolutely fascinating. And the recent podcast where you've been talking about fasting and things like that have been absolutely sensational. So well done on that. This was my favourite question from when I was on the podcast. So name the three people, dead or alive, that you would invite to a nice meal, and why.
Yeah, do you know what? I've thought about this a million times. I always ask it, and I'm like, oh, that's a good one when people answer the
Yeah,
question. This has taken some thought as well. It really has. But my three, and again, evolved through time, my three are Number one would be Kobe Bryant, for sort of the combination of the physical and the mental attributes that he had. He was a visionary, he was a leader, but he was at the top of the game from a physical aspect. I'm not an athlete by any means, but that commitment to showing up every day physically and mentally, and sort of being a family man that he was as well. And he wasn't just basketball in the end, he was going into different ventures and being fully committed 110% to whatever he was willing to do.
Yeah.
I take a hell of a lot from him, a hell of a lot. And if I do have those down days, which we talked about before, when I released at the weekend there, where I'm a little bit low, it's probably some Kobe YouTube motivation that I'll turn to just to pick me up a little bit and just get me going again. So yeah, Kobe's first, 100%. Second is Andrew Huberman,
Really interesting.
neuroscientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolute. Oh, taken so much from this guy, and a lot of the content that I'm part of in the podcast and with on my social platforms has come from him. He sort of gives the basics of a hell of a lot of stuff scientifically backed. If anything's backed by science, I'm caught. That's it. I want to know because it's facts at the end of the day. Then, and that sort of sends me off to read the different peer-reviewed studies and journals and stuff like that. So I kind of take a lot from him, and then that takes me down some rabbit holes on different platforms to go reading and do my own research. But he's incredible for anyone who's not listened to him before. So check out Andrew Huberman. And then the last one is controversial.
Go on then.
It would have been previously Jordan Peterson. I think you said Jordan Peterson.
I did, yeah.
I've taken a lot from him. He was a big reason for me studying psychology. Actually, I've got diplomas in psychology, clinical psychology, and I was massive into him, and I still am to some degree. But I've only got 3 slots, and over recent years, the contentious choice now is Andrew Tate.
Oof. Right,
Not
okay.
for everyone. Not for everyone. I know. I can already feel the comments coming in. Andrew
Yeah.
Tate, extremely intelligent guy. I'm somebody who is well educated enough and self opinionated enough to see. There's a saying there somewhere, isn't it? To see there's something between the fog, or do you know what I mean? I can take
Yeah.
what I want to take out of his content. Do you know what I mean? And I know a lot of his previous stuff has been contentious, and there's been a lot of debate sparked within the media and stuff. This guy, again, going from nothing to something, absolutely nothing. Growing up in Luton, living with his brother, living on microwave meals, not having a penny, to being his Ruben now worth £1 billion plus, do you know what I mean? And being the most Googled man on earth. Not saying I want that. I don't wish to be a celebrity by any means, but the journey that he's travelled and how direct he is with the content that he puts out. Again, it's not for everyone, but he says things how they are. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, switch off. It's not for you. If you want to listen. And there is some seriously good content in there. I think he's doing a hell of a lot for a hell of a lot of people, especially young males. You were taking a hell of a lot in uncertain times where there's a lot of uncertainty in the world, for lack of a better phrase. So yeah, that's my contentious choice. But yeah, Andrew Tate.
No, it does divide opinion. But irrelevant of what side of the fence you sit on when it comes to Andrew Tate, there's still going to be a point or a comment or a phrase or, a moment that you have to agree with him in whatever that element is. And he is hyper intelligent and he is very successful. So it'd be an interesting conversation. It'd be a really interesting conversation with those 3 people. The next question normally would say goes something along the lines of where can the listeners find you? But the listeners know where you are. This is your platform. This is your stage. So I'm going to change the question. And the final question is going to be, what's next?
Stay relentless. We're going to stay relentless in the pursuit. Again, I'm an open book, and I said the more I evolve and the more I achieve, gives me more confidence and sort of clouds out the insecurity that I alluded to a little bit earlier on. And I'm happy with being honest and showing my flaws and my insecurities now. So across the past 20 episodes, there have been numerous occasions where I've thought about dropping the podcast out. I'm not going to lie, just because I'm probably spinning so many plates and I'm so busy with all different things going on in life, but we've kept it consistent. We've got to this stage. So 20 is a landmark. We're going to aim to keep it consistent. We're going to aim to continue to provide knowledge, whether through the podcast or through the social platforms and in everyday interactions. That's the goal. So if we can continue to do that and build enough value behind it to then create the courses and the content that I alluded to a little bit earlier on and provide even more value to the masses, so to speak, then it's a job well done. So that's the plan for the future.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you for allowing me to host the podcast. I've certainly got to know you a little bit better, and I know you quite well. So I'm sure the listeners have. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, man.
No problem. See you later.